On a tropical bay, a band of fishermen walk alongside the beach. They collect seashells and fish in the deep blue waters. It's there where one spots a large island rising from the sea. Never before has such an image been seen. The island moves closer, then closer, until eventually it's in the middle of the entire bay. This was not our timeline. These mysterious men, the first contact between the new and old world, would not be under the Spanish or Portuguese flag. These men spoke Arabic. Their ship, the result of parallel evolution, resembling the caravel of our own world. Yet it was made entirely in Andalus, Muslim Spain. As in this alternate timeline, the Reconquista failed. Muslims held onto the Iberian Peninsula, and by the nature of geography, the first Old World people to reach the New were Arabic-speaking Muslims. This is a history where the Islamic world would be the first to colonize the Americas, and most importantly, be seen as a new source of wealth for the Ottoman Empire. There's always been a question in history. Of all the great empires, how come the Ottomans, which were far larger at one point than the Spanish or the Portuguese, unable to ever colonize the Americas? The answer to that is pretty complicated. Okay, well, not really. One, others beat them to the punch. By the time the Ottomans ever had a decent navy, the Christian kingdoms had already claimed large portions of the New World. Two, geography. Being on the other side of the Mediterranean really trapped the Ottomans from ever going out into the Atlantic. However, this did allow them to easily access the spice trade, if it wasn't for Portugal. 3. They were already dealing with adversaries internally and externally. The others just beat them to the punch. By the time the Ottomans even made an attempt, they were beaten back at every turn. So in many ways, the rise of the Iberian nations made it impossible for the Ottomans to ever get a chance at colonizing the Americas. Yet in this alternate timeline, they simply don't exist. The Reconquista failed, as explored in my last video, and coincidentally, this is really the only possible way the Ottomans ever could have gotten a chance. However, with Europe fundamentally altered, this makes the situation at least plausible. A chance for the Islamic world, along with the varying states within it, to try their hand in something they never did in our own history: colonialism. So, here's the thing. By the time any ship would have made it into the New World, the old one would have been changed for centuries. Without the existence of the Christian kingdoms in Iberia like Portugal, Castile, or Aragon, the dynamics of Western Europe have already shifted. Whole houses and dynasties birthed from a few marriages with reconquered kingdoms never exist. By the nature of feudal politics, whole borders may have already fundamentally shifted to be unrecognizable. So this scenario already is starting off pretty muddled. And because of that, there isn't going to be a straight historical source to rely on. This is a credible way of saying, I'm making this all up. Think of it as a vague way of exploring how the Americas themselves could have been dramatically different in a fictional sense. Okay? Let's have fun with it. For the last few centuries, Muslim sailors have been transporting slaves and goods from across the African coast, evolving in parallel with Portuguese designs, as both of these ships originated from the same source. Without a real sense of urgency that forces Andalus to go search for another route to the spice trade, the discovery of America in this alternate timeline would be just like the Vikings in Vinland, a complete accident. Had Columbus never sailed to the Americas, it's most likely that they would have been discovered not through the Caribbean, but by the eastern coast of Brazil. Taking advantage of natural ocean currents, it would only be a matter of time that any long-faring ocean vessel accidentally ends up on the shore of Brazil. I don't believe it'd occur in some alternate 1492, maybe 1692 perhaps. It would be interesting to imagine how exactly this clash of two worlds would be. Considering how little evidence and amount of speculation is needed for this, who's to say how exactly this interaction may go? Would the two greet one another? Would the Muslim merchants believe they landed in a whole new world? Or would they believe they landed off the coast of Asia? Would it result in violence or trade? Considering the lack of evidence, let's speculate even more using broad cultural ideas spanning centuries. This is like trying to guess what the Spanish may do in a situation using the Germans as an example, so take this with a grain of salt. The best comparison I can make is when Islamic voyagers interacted with other native people, the Indonesians. Centuries of interaction with Muslim merchants through the spice trade. And I would imagine the same situation would happen in the Americas. There is another idea as well. Would the Muslim states actually, colonize the Americas? And really, the only example of far-spanning continental colonies we have is through the Age of Discovery, which no longer exists. I would assume the answer would be no. At least for a little bit, and here's why. When imagining how colonization would work, the image that might appear in your mind is, well, this. But the way the Americas were colonized was very specific to the Spanish. Gold, glory, and God. And that mentality was what spurred the initial rush for land in the New World. An idea to grow rich and to spread the faith. In every major factor, the unique conflict between Christians and Muslims, from the trade taxes to the Reconquista to the crusading society of the Spanish, and eventually the urge to compete with the Ottomans, was what initially sparked the colonies in America to happen in the first place. Cordoba would not have the urge to find a new route to Asia since they wouldn't worry about Ottoman taxes, nor the urge to win against the Christians, as in practically all sense, they already did that by keeping the Christians out of Iberia. Really, their only main goal would be to take advantage of this new land and expand on it at their leisure using trade and conversion, something much more gradual. And with that, it'd mean that the trade and conversion simply creates new native allies. Any colonies that do exist would be trading outposts. This makes the colonization of the New World a far longer process than our own history. For one, we'd already have delayed discovery by a few centuries without Portugal or Spain, and with Cordoba, there isn't an immediate race to take the land. The natives still would suffer from Old World diseases, and their population dramatically decreases. However, without the combined effort to take territory and use the population for labor, the tribes and societies remain somewhat intact, allowing enough time for an infected population to bounce back. Now, as you can tell, this is incredibly general. Who would colonize where? The answer to that is it depends on who lands on which land first. These are things I can leave up to your imagination. How exactly would exploration go? Would Cordoba immediately send more ships to investigate? How quickly would news get out to Christian kingdoms that there are new lands out west? This discovery would shock the Christian world, as now, at best, the Arabs have found a new route to Asia and will convert the Indians, and at worst, they've found a new world and will convert its native population. It would be the pre-industrial version of the Sputnik launch. Any Muslim discovery is then met with others who want to compete with Andalus overseas. How this may go depends on Cordoba itself. In this alternate timeline, if Cordoba had successfully held back the French and British for centuries, then perhaps the Muslims could easily handle them overseas in this timeline. Really, this is about guessing who has the better naval capabilities after several hundred years of this alternate scenario. Perhaps the Ottomans, without needing to compete with the Portuguese, are able to establish a few outposts in the Caribbean. The Cordobans colonize the coastline of Brazil, and perhaps bits of upper South America. For the Ottomans themselves, they would not be able to claim that much land. A few islands in the Caribbean, at most, is probably the best the Turks could do. Would they follow the same path that the Christian colonies did in our own timeline? Ottoman wealth largely came from taxing goods on the Silk Road, not from producing goods en masse. Would Ottoman guilds somehow transform into producing cash crops in the New World? It's doubtful. But if they did, they would have used a slave labor force made up of exported Slavs and East African slaves. These Caribbean islands would still grow tobacco, sugar, and other crops worked on by a mix of black and white slaves, ruled over by an upper class of Persian-speaking Turkic nobles. This would make the Caribbean a very unique blend of cultures, I would say. Yet, even in the best-case scenario for the Turks, these islands, and the New World in general, would never be the Ottomans' main focus. In such a world without the Spanish and Portuguese, the Turks mainly take advantage of the Indian Ocean being free of interference. The later half of the millennium wouldn't need to be one of Ottoman decline, but instead one of substantial growth. They would never be trapped by the Mediterranean, and instead are able to threaten Russia, beat back the Polish, and actually defeat the Austrians. Keep in mind, in our own timeline, the height of Ottoman power was in the 16th century. If they had access to the Indian Ocean and actually could control the Mediterranean, then this would not be the height of their power. Perhaps they could have held back the Holy League and taken Vienna. Without Portugal, the Ottomans spread out across the Indian Ocean, creating new trading posts down the East African coast. Muslim influence in the New World would be a soft power, one that can be just as influential as any hard borders on a continent. If left to their own devices, the Cordobans would have a few centuries to interact, intermingle, and create potentially new alternate cultures within South America and the Caribbean. And for these natives, their native language would be influenced and eventually written in Arabic script. Perhaps Arabic would become a major language throughout what we'd call Latin America, Arabic America. There could be a potential rise of caliphates that may be primarily native dominated. Now the question here is, how much influence is there? Is there a fundamental change in culture throughout the Americas? Do new cities arise entirely based on Arabic? How many native tribes simply remain as they were? This is a timeline where somehow the Muslims weren't beaten out of Iberia. So if they can't be taken out of Europe, the competition certainly begins in the New World. Crops like tomatoes, tobacco, chocolate, and sugar would be considered by Europeans at first Arabic in nature. But Europeans would also be spurred by the notion that the Arabs were getting these goods first. Nobody likes a middleman, especially a Saracen one. So really, if Cordoba accidentally found Brazil, it'd only be a matter of time before the English, French, and Nordic countries make their way too. And really, these would be the only nations that could do anything. Since Muslim control in Americas would mostly be cultural, who's to say England and France couldn't begin claiming areas we'd imagine as Latin America today? Perhaps we might see some alternate situation where French forces attempt to take a city that is the capital of some Muslim native state in the Caribbean. Yeah, it's wacky, I know. Leading to South America, or what we think of as Mexico, being a strange blend of native English-speaking Muslims ruled over by a European state. Or maybe, even if Islam didn't stick, a mixed native English or French state in Central and South America. This would make the New World just as complex in many ways as the Old World, with Old World rivalries between Christians and Muslims essentially shaping the politics of the continent. The extent that this could be really depends on how successful the Ottomans and Andalus would be overseas, which, considering their actual history, this is already a tremendous stretch. English-speaking populations may exist throughout the Americas in a variety of different nations. Our concept of an Anglosphere might be entirely different, something much older. Think of the slight differences between Canadians, Americans, Australians, and South Africans. Now imagine that, but with dozens of various nations with different geographies and histories. Instead of these continents being entirely Spanish or Portuguese right off the bat, the colonization of the Americas is far more messy. No, not again. I don't want to spawn another video idea. In 1453, those big walls of Constantinople sure didn't do much against Ottoman cannons. Once impenetrable defenses, obliterated by the march of time. Today we have other walls and barriers that don't simply fall over when blasted by a Turkish bombard. Ones that exist only online, and can be taken down by unruly agents. That's right, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. the virtual private network that not only hides your IP address from miscreants online, but can allow you to circumvent those walls your own country puts on your internet. Your own personal Turkish bombard, but with, like, your computer against barriers online. Is this analogy even working? Can't watch something because it's blocked in your country? Use NordVPN. Want to hide your internet traffic and keep your info secure from ne'er-do-wells? Use NordVPN. Japanese Netflix. NordVPN allows you to choose from 5,400 plus servers in 59 countries. Who needs to travel the world and see their internet when you can just do it from home? You can even share files with others peer-to-peer. No info is ever collected or known by Nord, so you don't have to worry about your virtual private network judging you for your terrible life choices. And hey, you can even secure up to 6 devices. It's simple to do as well, with Nord's easy interface. Right now, Nord has a special holiday deal as the year ends for us all. Right now, you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount plus 1 additional month for free when you go to nordvpn.com/althist. That's quite the deal for your own virtual canon that you can, also hide in, because Nord keeps your identity secure. Wow, this analogy really fell apart, didn't it? But in case your relationship with Nord falls apart, you don't have to risk a dime with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/althist, or click the link in the description below. British Netflix.